I became a bus driver for a local school. I found a list of rules to follow when on the road. Part 2 link. I recently graduated from CDL school and decided to get a job relating to my field. After applying to every job that involved driving large vehicles that I could find, I got a reply about an hour later for a bus driver position at Frederickson High School. The message read, "Hello George. We have reviewed your application and have decided you would be perfect for our position. Your first day will start tomorrow. Your bus's number is 458 and is located at a bus yard on 207 Riverside Street. You can arrive at the bus yard at any time. But please arrive at the school before 4:00 a.m. This is when the students get dismissed. Once the students enter the bus, you can then deliver them to their 5 stops on Old Military Road. Ernest Fredrickson, principal of Frederickson High School." I was a bit confused on why there was no interview. But nevertheless I took the job anyway, not wanting to look at what I thought was a gifted horse in the mouth. I also thought it was weird that the school hours take place during the night. But I assumed that this school operated 24 hours a day, dividing students and teachers into 4 groups for each shift to follow social distancing guidelines, or just for efficiency in general. At around 3:15 a.m. I got into my rusty 1974 Ford F-250 and drove to the address listed in the message. It wasn't that far away. About a 15-minute drive. I arrived at a vehicle gate next to a guard shack. The bus yard consisted of a flat slab of dirt with several buses parked at the back, with a large space in the front to allow for maneuvering the buses into the spots. Surrounding the yard was a fence, with the aforementioned gate and shack replacing part of the fence. The guard in the shack was startled by my arrival, and proceeded to open the window slightly. "WH, who are you?" he asked. Hello." I replied, "I am George Redwood. I am here for bus 458. Are you okay?" He picked up a piece of paper, looking at it briefly before putting it down. He then passed me a key I presumed was for my bus. "Okay, sir. Here is your key. Find your bus and replace its parking spot with your truck. Then you can go." The gate then opened and I did as he asked. I drove my truck through the gate, got out to find my bus and then drove my bus to the front of the yard and parked it in a corner. I then walked back to my truck and parked it in my bus's original spot before going back to my bus and driving it back to the gate. My bus was one of those buses with the flat front engine in the back, and had the driver in front of the front wheels. I don't know what the official name of this design is. I noticed that the bus I was given had many dents and scratches, mostly on the front bumper. But I didn't think much of it and started my shift anyway. I arrived at the school at 3:47 a.m. I noticed that there was only one bus for this school, that being mine. This school was very small, so it made sense why there was only one bus. While I waited for the students to be dismissed, I found a list of rules along with a map in the gap between the steering wheel and the windshield. Rules for Frederickson High School busing. You must follow these rules when driving on Old Military Road. We cannot ensure your safety if you break any of these rules. 1. Do not use any electronic devices for navigation. They will try to deceive you. We've printed out a map for you to follow. 2. The bus stops you can drop kids off at are labeled 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. These stops resemble a bench with 3 walls with a roof, with the opening being on the front. The bus stop's number will be on both sides of all 3 walls. If you stop at a bus stop that is not one of the above, leave the stop immediately and continue your journey. Try not to look at anything nearby a fake stop besides checking a wall to see if it's a valid stop. 3. The road is supposed to be very old, windy and unmaintained. If the road suddenly changes to a straight road that appears to be newly paved, and the scenery starts repeating, immediately slam on the brakes and turn around before it's too late. Once the road starts curving again, and the straight part is no longer visible, you can turn around and continue your journey. If turning around is not possible, shift the bus into reverse and drive until you either find a place to turn around or the road returns to normal. For if the road reaches a dead end, turn around or reverse until the end of the road is no longer visible. Similar to Rule 3. 5. If the road merges with another road, remember which side you came from. This will be important if you have to turn around. Do not drive on the road you did not come from. 6. If any other vehicles appear on the road, disable them by any means possible. I don't care about minor damage to the bus. You can easily bash through any cars or light trucks. But be careful around larger vehicles that could put up a fight. Do not drop off any students if your bus is currently being perused by any vehicles, or you disabled one recently and it crashed near a bus stop. 7. If your bus gets stuck for whatever reason, alert the students. They'll know what to do. There is a handgun in a glove compartment near the steering wheel. Use it to defend the bus if they attempt to get in. Wait in the bus until dawn. Then contact us to get you out of there. No pay will be deducted if this happens. 8. If you hear a church bell, avoid going towards the source. If it's behind you, you're good. If it's on your side or in front of you, turn around and get as far away as you can until the ringing stops. Once you can no longer hear the bell, you can turn around and continue your journey. This usually doesn't last long. 9. If you see a creature on your right running parallel to your bus, do not under any circumstances open any doors or windows. While it will always run at the speed of your bus, you can confuse it by constantly accelerating and decelerating. Doing that may allow you to get into a position in which you can run it over. This is the only known was to stop it. 10. If the engine stops for seemingly no reason, immediately start it up again and floor it. Do not look at what is behind the bus. If that doesn't work, refer to Rule 7 for everyone's safety. 11. If you see a human on the road, run it over. Even if it resembles a loved one, it's not a human. If you fail to run it over, skip any remaining stops and return to the bus yard as quickly as possible. Do not under any circumstances open any doors or windows. If you have to turn around for whatever reason, do so as quickly as possible. Despite the fact you likely won't see it again, it is still following you. Once you arrive at the bus yard, alert the guard. They'll know what to do. 12. If you see a mansion in the distance, turn off all lights and floor it. None of our students live here. Its position on the road changes often, sometimes not appearing at all. The owners are deaf, but they can still see. The part of the road directly in front of the mansion is straight, and you can turn your lights back on once you're surrounded by forest again. So you'll be fine. This mansion is at least twice as tall as the forest, and emits light from the rooms. So if you pay attention, you can spot it from far enough away that you can turn off your high beams and headlights before they notice the light. If you see a ridiculously bright light behind you, they saw you. If this happens, put on the modified sunglasses in the glove compartment and get out of there as quickly as possible. The students are prepared with similar sunglasses to prevent being blinded by this light, so don't worry about them. If you are forced to turn around, for whatever reason, do it as quickly as possible. Do not drop off any students when the owners are chasing you, and return to the bus yard if necessary. When the light disappears, you've lost them and can continue your journey. Keep all doors and windows closed during this. 13. The true end of this road merges with a larger road at a three-way stop. If any students are still in the bus once you've passed all 5 stops, go back to the front of the road and try again. Keep doing this until all students have reached their stops, or if you get too tired to continue. I was very confused on what to think of this. Sure, it sounds impossible, but as a long-time lurker of this subreddit, I know I should take these rules seriously. Nevertheless, I continued waiting for the students to be dismissed and came up with a plan. I will follow the rules unless they could potentially harm someone if they are fake, such as the vehicle ramming. If I can prove a rule to be true without breaking any of them, I will assume they are all real and follow them all. At 4:00 a.m., the students exited the school and got on my bus. I estimated that 20 students entered the bus. about 80% capacity under the social distancing guidelines. Despite the situation, most of the students were very chill. As if they've been going to this school for so long this shit doesn't scare them anymore. Once all the students entered the bus, I closed the doors and got on the road. The road was a 2-lane windy road through a forest. Though it was paved, it looked like it hasn't been maintained for decades, with the potholes poorly patched with tar. The pothole fillings looked like chunks of the first road Lightning McQueen paved in cars. Roads like this are nothing unusual here in upstate New York. The first 10 minutes were uneventful, and I dropped off 3 students at stop 1 with no complications. That was until I heard a student scream, "They're here." I looked in the left mirror, and sure enough, I saw a pair of headlights in the distance. Rule 6: if any other vehicles appear on the road, disable them by any means possible. I accelerated the bus, but the pair of headlights accelerated faster. It caught up to me in a matter of seconds, and started tailgating me. It got so close that the headlights were no longer visible from the rear window. But I still knew it was back there. "What is happening?" I yelled to the students. Even though I knew exactly what was going on, I was still hoping this was all a joke. Several students replied at once, but I couldn't decipher what any of them were saying. Should I brake check the vehicle? Every student replied yes. So I did. I slammed on the brakes, causing my bus to come to a halt within seconds. I heard tires screeching coming from both vehicles, shortly followed by loud crunch from the back of the bus. I then accelerated the bus, looking out the rear window to see the vehicle behind me has stopped chasing me. A collision at that speed must have broken something important under the hood, as we were going 60+ miles per hour at the time of the collision. About a minute later, I arrived at stop 2. 2 students got up, a boy and a girl. So I assumed I was far enough away from the other vehicle to drop them off. I opened the doors and they were about to step off until we noticed our mistake. That wasn't stop 2. It was stop Z. Rule 2: the bus stops you can drop kids off at are labeled 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. If you stop at a bus stop that is not one of the above, leave the stop immediately and continue your journey. I immediately sped off, closing the doors while the bus was already moving. The 2 students were still at the front of the bus, grabbing the railing to avoid falling due to the dramatic acceleration. Not even a second after I closed the doors, I heard demonic screeching from my right. "Driver, look!" one of the students yelled. She was pointing at the doors, revealing that something managed to get part of itself wedged between the doors. As I had to focus on the road, I didn't have much time to look at it, but I was still able to catch a glimpse of whatever she was pointing at. It looked like an arm of a massive gingerbread man, except it reflected no light. I could hear whatever that arm was attached to being dragged across the asphalt, sounding like a mix of wood and metal. I briefly opened the doors, causing the creature to loose its grip and fall to the ground. "What the hell was that?" I asked the students, who were still on the staircase. "I don't know," replied the female student. "I've seen that thing a few times. The fake bus stop is fairly uncommon. It usually happens at least once a month. But the creatures usually don't get to the bus in time anyway." The male student returned to his seat. This event somehow made me come up with a question for the female student. "Actually, how long have you been here?" "I've lived here since I was a baby. Every house here has its own set of weird rules, but it's all my family could afford. So we've been living together ever since." "Oh. And what's your name?" she added. "George. And you?" "Angela." "Oh. Okay. Would you mind staying up here so we can?" "This is the police. Stop your vehicle immediately." A masculine voice yelled through a megaphone. The voice sounded like a pathetic attempt of mimicking a human. It sounded like the sentence was put through text-to-speech software and blasted out of a megaphone. I was so into my conversation with Angela that I was completely oblivious to the police cruiser in the left lane. The other students were also distracted by us, so they were unable to warn me like they did last time. I slowed down my bus, causing the cruiser to start passing me, intending to do a pit maneuver once it was in position. But what I saw in the cab will haunt me forever. Hope you got through on your first night, OP. I always read stories like these and ponder over how much attention and focus is required to obey some of these rules and think that I would probably quit on the first day. I can be absent-minded at times and I don't trust myself to be able to remember every detail that's required. Most of the rules require you to kill or avoid things anyway, so it's not that hard. The problem is how risky it is to do the job in the first place. Even when following the rules, you're still not completely safe. I hope they give you a damn good pay. Sometimes you gotta ask yourself, is the pay worth it? The real question is, why does a school finish at 4 a.m.? I became a bus driver for a local school. I was given a set of rules to follow when on the road. Part 2. Part 1. Link 3. Link. The two creatures inside were vaguely humanoid, enough for them to operate a motor vehicle designed for humans. They looked like the creature from Venom, but covered in bluish black scales, as if they were reptiles. The one in the passenger seat turned its head 90 degrees to look at me, without moving anything below its neck. Its eyes were thin vertical lines, stretching from the top of the mouth to the top of the forehead, like the eyes of the stick people from the Henry Stickmin collection. Except they emitted a white light from them like Herobrine from Minecraft. The two of us stared at each other for what felt like forever. I was not concerned about the fact I wasn't paying attention to the road. I somehow completely forgot I was driving a bus. I even forgot I existed altogether. The entire concept of anything I was looking at vanished from my mind, as if I was in the latest stages of dementia. All I knew was the bright light emitting from the creature's eyes. After an unmeasurable amount of time, we broke eye contact when the cruiser got stuck between a rock and a school bus. I immediately regained the concept of existence and realized what was going on. The bus had been going in a straight line, but the road wasn't straight, and the bus had been veering into the left lane this whole time until the bus was pushing the cruiser against the cliff on the left. This caused the cruiser to come to a halt almost instantly. I immediately got back into my lane to avoid meeting a similar fate to the cruiser. "You're finally back," Angela screamed inches from my face. She got down and cried on the floor while repeating the same sentence multiple times through sobs. How long was I staring at that thing? I asked her. She just cried harder. "Oh. Okay," I said awkwardly. There's a tissue box between the dashboard and the windshield. You should probably take off your mask until you're done crying." I wanted to comfort her, but I had no idea what I was supposed to do in this situation. So I just let her cry on the floor while resting against my right leg. This usually works for me when I am having a breakdown, but I have no idea how neurotypical brains work, or if Angela is neurotypical in the first place. Less than a minute after the crash, I arrived at stop 3. 2 students got up to exit, so Angela got out of the way so they could get off at the stop and begin their trek down the ominous path beside it. As I left the stop, Angela answered my question from earlier. "You were looking at that thing for like 5 minutes," she said. "And you were so stiff I couldn't do anything. I couldn't access the brakes. I could barely move the steering wheel. At least your foot wasn't on the diesel." I laughed. "I just call it the accelerator. Which is stupider, calling a liquid fuel gas or calling the accelerator the gas? We should pay attention to what's going on around us so something doesn't sneak up on us like last time." Good idea. Well, I am going to go back to my seat so I don't get yeeted through the windshield. But if you need any help or have any more questions for me, just call me and I'll come back up here. All right. Minutes later, I heard clunking noises from the back of the bus. Before any of us could comprehend what was going on, the engine stopped. Rule 10: if the engine stops for seemingly no reason, immediately start it up again and floor it. Do not look at what is behind the bus. If that doesn't work, Refer to Rule 7 for everyone's safety. I desperately tried to start the engine. But it was to no use. The bus was still gliding down the road because of inertia. But I could barely move the steering wheel. Powered steering was disabled when the engine turned off. The road was still relatively straight. Enough for me to stay on the road with my very limited steering. But if I encountered a curve, I would have to stop the bus and execute Rule 7. The rules implied something behind the bus managed to turn off the engine. That's when I noticed a pair of headlights suddenly appear behind me. The unseen vehicle went into the left lane and accelerated. Until it was beside me. It was the cruiser from earlier. Those little shits turned off their lights and followed my taillights to navigate the road. I immediately stopped looking at it to avoid being hypnotized again. After holding down the starter for about 10 seconds. The engine finally came back to life. And I floored it. The cruiser noticed this and accelerated. Now that I've gotten my powered steering back, I blindly swerved into the left lane while staring directly ahead. I heard a loud crunch from my left. I looked into my left mirror and saw that the cruiser was no longer following me. The entire chassis was bent when the corner of my bus collided with the back right door. The things attempted to hypnotize me through the mirror. But they were too far away at this point to affect me. Seconds after the crash, I saw stop 4 on the right, but skipped it because the cruiser was way too close to it. The hill was still on the left, but the area on the right was flat enough to fit a few houses. These houses were fairly large, probably about 2,500 square feet on the top 2 floors, and an unknown amount of space underground if they had basements. I remember stop 1 and 3 didn't have any houses visible from the bus stop. So this was the first time I got to see the houses. As I passed the houses, I decided to ask a few questions to the residents. Can someone who lives at stop 4 come up here for a moment? I have questions about the houses. A boy from the seat behind me came up. How much does it actually cost to live here? Before I could say anything else, I saw an old man with a cane slowly crossing the road. Rule 11: if you see a human on the road, run it over. Even if it resembles a loved one. It's not a human. I already had enough faith in the rules at this point to know that was not a human. But the screeching he made when I ran over him further reinforced it. After a short pause, the boy answered my question. $50 a month. For me at least. And yes, we have rules just as weird and terrifying as the ones in here. Wow. It's not as much as a bargain as it sounds. Anyone who lives here is either extremely poor, or is oblivious to what they are getting themselves into. Most of the cost is paid with the mental and sometimes physical trauma that comes with living here. Yeah. I've heard the stories about places like this. Definitely not worth it. I doubt you could report any of this to the police or some other authority. My family actually did have to call 911 once. We told the operator that some dude with a gun was in our house. Nobody believes the officers that showed up and forced Fred, the creature that terrorizes the residents at stop 4, to retreat back into the forest. Maybe we could tell you our story sometime. Maybe. I am going back to my seat now. Name's Tommy, by the way. Nice meeting you. Tommy. I'd like to hear your stories about your life here sometime. Tommy was about to return to his seat when he noticed something. Oh shit. Rule 9. He yelled. Rule 9: if you see a creature on your right running parallel to your bus, do not under any circumstances open any doors or windows. While it will always run at the speed of your bus, you can confuse it by constantly accelerating and decelerating. Doing that may allow you to get into a position in which you can run it over. This is the only known was to stop it. I looked to the right and saw it. Running besides the bus doors was a creature running on all fours. It was like a brute version of the creatures in the cruiser. Its arms and legs were nearly identical. And it was running like a horse. The bus was going 40 mph at this point. A very appropriate speed for this road. I sped up. But so did it. Tommy quickly ran back to his seat as the bus was starting to become unstable as I drove way too fast for this road. now at over 80 plus miles per hour. The thing was still beside the door. And had been since I spotted it. I slowed down. But the creature didn't decelerate as quickly. Now at 60 mph. I aimed the bus right at it and ran it over as the creature attempted to slow down. Before I could celebrate, I saw a pair of taillights ahead. The taillights brightened as the vehicle slowed down. They saw me. And this wasn't anything small. Nope. It was a semi-truck. I could never remember all those rules. Props to you, OP. Couldn't help but realize. Were you driving in a straight paved road? 'Cause it was relatively straight. Could just be my misunderstanding. It's not the Rule 3 road though. The road is still really old. I definitely understand how you came to that conclusion though. OP, important question for your second day if you keep doing it. Do you have prior experience of firing a gun? 2. Do you handle pressure well? 3. Are you mentally weak? 4. Will you keep doing the job for fun, Saki? 1. Not really. 2. No. 3. Depends on the situation. 4. Probably not unless I can make this safer. But I have no idea how neurotypical brains work, laughing my butt off, same. It's an absolute mystery to me sometimes, honestly. The fact the kids are helpful is a feat by itself. Like, dude, I love the kids. Now I do have a suggestion. Maybe for later days. Just go looking for the old lady in the shop and ask her for the wolf pendant. It should be enough to ward some of the more dangerous creatures if they know what's best for them. First rough day. Holy jeez.